Hello, and welcome to the Week 2 version of the Monster Pod here on TheLines.com. Steven Andress, Matt Brown, joined this week by Connor Allen of 4 for 4. You got to go check out their great work over there. Connor, and welcome to the podcast, my man.
Matt, Steven, appreciate you guys having me on. Always awesome to talk some ball. Week 1 was, I don't want to say it was awesome football. It was pretty boring, to be honest, but there are a couple good games and excited to dig into Week 2.
Everything we do, absolutely free. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and you can follow along with us here all season long. Guys, Las Vegas Raiders and the Baltimore Ravens. This is all the way out to 8.5. There is a 9 out there that has just popped as we are sitting here talking. So anywhere from 8 to 9. This got all the way to 10 before there was some buyback on the Raiders. 41.5 is our total. Connor, you're the guest here, so we'll go ahead and give you the honors. We saw the Ravens, of course, lose in week 1. We see the Raiders look like not really even an NFL football team. And so we get this big spread, but is it justified?
Yeah, and that's what I worry about, is because we saw this Ravens team come into Kansas City last week and have to pass a ton because they were down the entire game. And I don't think that that's how this Ravens team wants to play. And now they're going to have the opportunity, I think, to show more of their true colors against a Raiders team that you already mentioned is not very good. So in this spot here, though I worry, I mean, we're getting a big spread here immediately at 8. So for me, it's kind of a pass because I go back and forth. I worry a little bit about this Ravens defense. I worry about the offensive line, which looked terrible against Kansas City last week. And I mean, it's not like the Raiders don't have pass rushers. They can get home if they need to. So I think that could cause some havoc and keep the game a little bit closer than most people anticipate. Yeah,
Connor, that's my thoughts exactly here is that, listen, if the only thing the Raiders might be able to do all season long is get at the quarterback with that defensive line of theirs. And what I saw with the Ravens last week, I don't think I want any part of it, Steven. There was one obvious teaser last week that got destroyed by Cincinnati. I know a lot of people talking about the teaser here with this one, taking the 8 down to 2. I don't know if you're going that way this week. What say you?
I do have a teaser, but I do have some concerns about the Raiders pass rush in this game. But I can't get clarity here because, you know, my eyes told me that the Baltimore offensive line struggled against Kansas City. But if you look at some of the metrics, Baltimore actually graded pretty well by PFF and ESPN's pass block win rate, but they also graded extremely poorly in the percentage of snaps they allowed quick pressure. So I don't know, Matt, you could tell me if you disagree. I watched that Chiefs game and I thought there were enough snaps where there was total breakdowns on
the early season grades to me just about everywhere have been wacky. So I'm just kind of like, I like my friends at these other places that put the grades out. And so I'm going to reserve for the next, give them 2 more weeks to get these things to level out. But some of the stuff I saw this week was just absolutely crazy. I saw the same thing you did, Steven, but yeah, the Ravens were awful.
Yeah. So now you get Christian Wilkins, the former Miami standout, on that defensive tackle position to go with Max Crosby on the outside. That's a hefty assignment for this Baltimore offensive line. Combine that with Antonio Pierce just never going to make an aggressive, smart decision. It seems like, you know, the surrender index literally graded it as the worst 4th down decision this century. 4th and 1 on the Chargers 43, down 6 with 7 minutes left. They punt, Chargers score, game over. I mean, up until that point, they were in the game. They might cover the 3. But he makes the worst decision.
Steven, talk about this week. What do you think about the game? What are you doing? Everyone saw it already. Talk about this game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm caught in between. I think the teaser is fine, right? I think the teaser is fine to get it down there. My one concern would be the protection for Lamar Jackson in this game.
Connor, Steven gets yappy sometimes on stuff. He was giving us play-by-play of a game that's a week old today. He's getting he's giving us the play-by-play. Yeah, everyone saw it. Everyone understands. What does that mean for this?
It's your job to keep him on track, right?
Yeah,
the best place in the game right here.
You learned fast, Cotter. You learned fast. He's got to keep me on the straight and narrow here. That's for damn sure.
Look, I don't hate the teaser leg, but honestly, it's just a pass for me. I got to see more out of this Ravens team and try to figure out what they're all about. Tampa Bay Bucks and the Detroit Lions. This is out to 7.5 now in favor of the Lions at home over the Bucks. 51.5 is our total. Steven, we're dealing with some cluster injury situation there for the Bucks. So this thing pushed all the way from 6 out to 7.5. That is a significant move here in the betting markets. I can't say it's not justified. If everything breaks poorly for the Bucks, they're going to be out there with their third teamers in some of the situations.
I agree. It could be really bad, but it's at least better at this point as we record on Friday morning than I thought it was going to be. Their nickel, Tyke Smith, just has an illness, so I expect he'll play. Their number 2 corner, Zion McCollum, does have a concussion, but got upgraded to full participant on Thursday. Certainly still going to be without Antoine Winfield in the back end and Kalijah Kancey up front, so that's not great. But this is still a Bucs offense that outgained Detroit by 1.3 yards per play in the playoff game a year ago. They were tied going into the fourth quarter, wound up losing by 8 because of a couple Baker interceptions. Now fast forward to this year, and are the changes positive or negative for the Bucs offense? I'm not making sweeping assessments on what they did against a putrid Washington secondary. That's not my takeaway. My takeaway is what they did schematically. They increased their pre-snap motion by 32% in week 1. One of only 3 teams in week 1 to do that, more than 30% from last year. They also threw it on first down 68% of the time. That was top 5 in the league. Now you look at potential matchups here. Cooper Kupp last week, 14 of his 21 targets came from the slot. Chris Godwin played more slot snaps than out wide in week 1, something he only did once all of last year. And even though we had some optimism about the Detroit defense coming into the season, I certainly didn't walk away more confident last week when they had an opportunity to just manhandle a completely depleted Rams offensive line and did not do so. They finished 17th in pressure rate. And if you look at what the Bucs did week 1, again, some differences here in the offensive line grading systems, but other than the ESPN metric, which has typically been wonky here and there, the Tampa Bay Bucs offensive line graded out just fine by PFF and SIS's blown block percentage grade. So I think there's absolutely some matchups here for the Buccaneers wide receivers. I think Baker should have time. I think the scheme helps him against the secondary in Detroit that didn't have a single corner graded in the top 40 in week 1.
Connor, I missed out on the best of the number from a total standpoint. I actually think there are probably going to be some points in this thing. It was at 49 when it opened. I didn't pull the trigger. I agree with the move up to 51.5. Now it might be just a little bit too much for me to get involved with. As I look back on it, I'm like, man, I missed the 49. 49 probably should have been the entry point there on that one. What say you here on Bucs and Lions?
Yeah, in an NFL where points are hard to come by and yards are hard to come by, I think that this game is going to save us this week. I'm really excited here. I think we're going to see a lot of points. I think from my standpoint, I think you're right in terms of the total. 51.5 is a bit rich. I think at this point, the pivot is to props. I think Goff overs, Jamison Williams, we saw him play over 90% of the snaps for the first time ever and looked awesome. They're running him on drag routes. They're getting him into space. I think that type of upside is massive for a guy like Jamison Williams, and we saw crushed against a Tampa Bay secondary, as you mentioned. It's a little bit beat up. And overall, I mean, even if they're not, like we saw Goff last year throw over 353 and 287 against Tampa team that I think is relatively similar. Godwin over, as you mentioned, he played a lot out of the slot. They got ripped for 14 receptions for 123 yards last week out of the slot. So I think there's a lot of possibilities on overs, and that's probably where I'm going to turn my attention to in the prop market instead of the direct total on the game.
Yeah, I know a lot of people turn their nose up when we say stuff like this, but listen, it's the way that people want to bet, and it's fun. Where this seems like the perfect kind of same game parlay like game, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like you just like go in, you put 3 or 4 together, you tell a story with, okay, this is going to be a high scoring game, and this team's going to win, and then you tell that story. It seems like kind of like the perfect situation for that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, you can play alternate overs here because again, if there's a little bit of back and forth here, I think that, something like Goff 300 plus, maybe Godwin 75 plus, and even, again, like either team to win, I think is fine because this game, just like neither defense. And I thought Steven brought up a great point about this Lions defense that they keep putting like Band-Aids on the secondary and it just never works. Like they're ripped right off immediately. Yeah. And everyone wants to project them to be better, but the reality is their defense isn't very good at this point, it seems like. So I do think though that the pressure rate against the Rams being so low was probably partly due to Stafford just getting the ball out ridiculously fast because he knew that they couldn't like run the ball or could like pass protect at all. So they just had Cooper Kupp running short routes basically the entire time. So I do think that the Lions pass rush should be a little bit better than they were against the Rams, but we'll see. Again, still TBD.
New Orleans Saints and the Dallas Cowboys in the what did we see last week from either one of these teams because it was almost over before it started. The Saints go out, have 17 points on the board by the time the kickoff happened, and then the Cowboys basically didn't have to do anything against a Browns team that was just trying to figure some stuff out there. We're sitting 6.5 right now in favor of the Cowboys at home over the Saints team. 46.5 is our total. 147 out there actually in the market. So shop around if you're looking to play the total. Connor, I didn't really take anything away from the Saints win last week. I know maybe you could say, okay, well, Derek Carr at least threw the ball down the field and looked good doing that. And that's fair, and I'll give you that. But it was over from jump, and so I'm just kind of like, I don't really know. And then the Cowboys didn't have to do anything at all. So you look at the stat line for Dak Prescott, it wasn't all that impressive. But again, they didn't have to do anything because the Browns were completely inept. And so I don't know really what I saw from either one of these teams in week one.
Yeah, and I felt pretty similar because I thought that there was some encouraging signs from the Saints, especially with motion rate. They were moving guys a lot pre-snap, which matters a lot in terms of just making easy plays for Derek Carr in that offense. But in this specific matchup, I'm extremely worried about the Saints offensive line. That was all the talk in the offseason. Like, hey, this Saints offensive line is like a bottom 3 to 5 unit. And then they run into Carolina in week one, who is literally one of the worst pass rush defensive lines, in the league. And they don't do anything against them. And so now at this point, now they're facing the Cowboys defensive line, which is one of the best at getting pressure. I worry significantly about that. And that's what has me leaning towards the Cowboys here. I don't necessarily love the Cowboys. I just think that that mismatch up front could cause a lot of issues for New Orleans. So it's not a big play of mine, but I would definitely lean towards the Cowboys at -6.
Yeah, Steven, one thing we did see last week, I can say I misspoke. Micah Parsons was just living in the backfield last week against the Browns. And so I imagine that's going to happen again this week here against the Saints. I did play a little Cowboys at 6. Not a full size bet for me, but as anyone saw any content that I had on the offseason, I'm a little bit down on the Saints comparatively to the market. So I think that there was a little bit of smoke and mirror stuff going on. Steven, what say you here?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I can take away from the Saints is not how many points they scored or how efficient the offense was because of the quality of the opponent in Carolina. But to Connor's point, the pre-snap motion, the play action, they went from one of the teams in the league that do that the least to one of the teams that did it the most in week one. And as a 49ers fan, I've seen game after game where you use that and it mitigates pass rush. Micah Parsons has 0 sacks against Kyle Shanahan's offense in I think at least 3 games. So I want to see if that translates here. If so, arrow up for the Saints moving forward rest of the season. But I'm not willing to lay this many points with the Cowboys off of what I saw last week where, despite 33 points, only wound up ranking 22nd by EPA, 27th by success rate, 4.4 yards per play. They were given a lot of great field positions there. So this is a wait and see for me. I'm very curious about this Saints offensive line and if the scheme mitigates what our issues thought they were, what we thought they were coming into the season.
Los Angeles Chargers and the Carolina Panthers. Chargers head across the country as 4.5 to 5 point favorites over the Panthers. Total down 38.5 to 39 here in this one. Can't say that I disagree with it. Steven, we touched on this a bit whenever we were talking in the Survivor pod earlier in the week. So go check out our thoughts there on that. From that aspect, is likely to be one of the more popular plays this week is the Chargers. But as far as this game goes, Steven, I think my sentiment stays the same, which is they're daring me to bet the Panthers. I don't necessarily want to do that, but I sure as hell am not going to lay it with the Chargers on the road across the country with an early kickoff and all of that. I mean, Harbaugh wants to run to win, and that's fine. I just think you have to be so incredibly precise and efficient when you do that in today's NFL. So I don't know. I don't think the Panthers are as bad as we saw last week overall. I don't know how they could be, but I'm not willing to back them here. Certainly not at the number we're sitting at right now.
Yeah, I certainly see why some of the sharp money has moved this way back down from 6.5 earlier in the week. I mean, the Chargers were very inconsistent against the Raiders before popping that big play and, Pierce having a terrible decision with a chance to go down and potentially take the lead and win the game. So I think this is potentially boom or bust week to week with the Chargers. But I mean, what confidence can I have in Carolina right now? On top of looking like the worst team in the league, they lose $100 million defensive lineman last week. So, and they're playing a team that wants to smash it down your throat. So, I mean, what confidence can I have in Carolina doing anything here? I need to see them look like somewhat of a professional football team. I don't know what number I would need to bet Carolina at this point, but this is one of those games where you get a lot of bettors in the market who are looking at spreadsheets and running models and the number tells them to take Carolina. That's just not the way I handicap. I need to see somewhat of competency before I before I bet Carolina right now.
Connor, we look at this total super, super low, but you kind of look and say, all right, the Panthers Bryce Young still looked like a rookie that had never played football before last week. You get this Chargers team that they said they want to run to win. They're just going to run. If they get a lead in this thing, it wouldn't surprise me to see them kind of take the air out of the ball. So I look at the 39 and as low as it is, I'm going, this has like 17-6 written like all over it. Like, why am I not betting the under here? What say you here, Chargers and Panthers?
Yeah, and that's what I keep looking at here too. It's like one of those where you're like, oh, well, that's really low. But when you think about what both teams are going to do and what they want to do, like it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be really ugly. You know, the Chargers are going to run the ball a ton, kill clock. We know that the Panthers, I mean, they looked abysmal. They're probably better than what we saw last week. I think they're somewhere in between what we, some expectations, but it was ugly. It was real ugly. So yeah, I lean under on the game. I did play some Xavier Legette unders as well. He ended up with a good stat line in the final box score, 7 targets, 4 receptions on 35 receiving yards. Before those targets came in the fourth quarter with Deontay Johnson on the bench, he only ran 57% of the dropbacks prior to the fourth quarter as well. So I think we're going to see just like an ugly, low volume game where Legette's probably only like a part-time player half the game. So in that spot, I took the under. I think it's around 23-20. And so that's still like, I love the ugly unders, in these games. So
yes.
It's one of my favorite plays of the week.
Cleveland Browns and the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is a field goal in favor of the Jags at home. We got a 41 and a half total here in this one. Connor, the question is, and we just talked about a game in which it was a low total, and I still think that the under is very much in play. If you believe that there's any life at all with this Browns team with Deshaun Watson, this total's probably way too low, probably a full 3 or 4 points too low, but the market is dictating what we have seen out of this team for the last year and a half. And so I personally think Deshaun Watson is never going to be Deshaun Watson, even close to Deshaun Watson ever again. However, there are some people out there who still are holding out hope. I think the spread is pretty appropriate in all this. I'm only interested in the total, but it's more you guys are going to have to convince me that there's any way that the Browns are going to look like a real offense in this league. And if that's the case, then like I said, I think this could be mispriced by even a few points.
Yeah, my issue with Deshaun here is, since he's joined the Browns, 59% completion rate, 6.2 yards per attempt, he's 52nd in EPA plus CPOE composite score. It's like, combination of 2 different good metrics there that I think do a good job. He's 52nd out of 71 quarterbacks with 100 attempts. So, I don't know. I just have a really hard time at this point thinking that he can get back to what we saw in Houston. And so I'm honestly at the point where I think that they should bench him. I think it should just be over. You should bring in Jameis Winston. Maybe that's just like me wanting fun again and loving the Joe Flacco era, that we saw and slinging it with, Cooper and everyone. But still, it's one of those points where he's just not consistently on time. He's not making the big plays that we saw. And if he's not doing either of those, then what are we doing here? Why is he still on the field? So for me, this is a game where we saw Jacksonville play an insane rate of man defense last week. And I think that could give them problems here could give Deshaun Watson problems here again. So for me, it's a lean under, but I just have a hard time gauging either of these teams right here because I don't want to get caught, catching a falling sword with Deshaun Watson and the Browns here in case, I don't know, maybe some reason they pop off. So
last time we saw the Jags, Steven, it was 17-7. They were heading in to make it 24-7 against the Dolphins, and it was going to be the dagger. And instead, ball gets punched out and everything goes to hell, and the Jags end up not scoring again and losing the game. That said, you are getting in my opinion, a better and lighter opponent here in the Browns than you are in the Dolphins. How are you looking at this one?
No play for me at 3. I'm hoping this steady little trickle of Browns money keeps coming and we get under 3, considering the look ahead was 2 in this one. If this gets to 2.5, then yeah, I will play the Jags, but I will also be looking at the Browns injury report. Is Jack Conklin going to play at tackle? He was back-to-back limited. Is Jedrick Wills going to play? He was DNP and then limited on Thursday. If even one of those guys is out for Deshaun Watson, I really like the Jags defensive line. I think they got a lot of talent up front there. So that's what I'm kind of looking for before I pull the trigger going into kickoff on Sunday. I'll just double down on what Connor said. He gave the great stat about Deshaun Watson's EPA and CPOE score. I looked at success rate since 2022 with quarterbacks who have played at least 500 plays. Deshaun Watson has only been better than Zach Wilson, Bryce Young, and Davis Mills since 2022. That's a big sample size. Mac Jones and Sam Howell have had a higher success rate down to down than Deshaun Watson. And that was a lot of games where he had both of his tackles. So I'm out. I'm out on Deshaun Watson at this point. You want to give me a lot of points, we can have that discussion, but I'm just done. I'm done.
I'm with you, Steven. If it got off the field goal, it would be very interesting to me. Probably just going to be a contest play for me, something like that, like take the Jags and move on. But
Matt, one more.
Yeah.
Future, I wanted to bet here this week.
Oh, all right.
One of our freelancers, Judah Fortgang, I thought made a really compelling case this week for Brian Thomas, Offensive Rookie of the Year for the Jags. He was a blatant DPI away from a 5-catch, 88-yard, 2-touchdown game in his NFL debut. To me, it's clear like this guy might be the number one option in this offense. And if you look at the board right now of all the favorites ahead of him, ton of question marks with those quarterbacks, including Marvin Harrison at wide receiver. I think 25-1. I got 30-1 at Fanatics. I really like this bet.
Yeah, it's certainly wide open for sure. There's just like nobody went out and took the lead in the race last week in this. Indianapolis Colts and the Green Bay Packers. This is currently 2.5 to 3 in favor of the Colts on the road over the Packers. 40.5 is our total. Steven, we know what's going on here. Jordan Love out for a couple of weeks. I don't believe one bit Matt LaFleur with his we're leaving it open for him to play this week. No, you're not. You're not running that dude out there this week. It looked like his leg bent in half. There's no freaking chance you're putting him out there. So this is going to be Malik Willis here in this game. And so we see the line flip to, in some places, like I said, all the way to a field goal, but 2.5 at the majority of shops out there in favor of the Colts.
I saw 2 Friday morning with some more Colts injury concerns. This has been the most heated debate in the sports betting industry this week. What is the drop from Jordan Love to Malik Willis worth on the line? Has it gone too far? Yada, yada, yada. Listen, this is not Joe Flacco coming off the bench. This is not a decent quarterback with a lot of experience coming off the bench. Malik Willis sucks. All right. He is more of a third string quarterback than he is a backup quarterback. Since 2022, here are the QBs Willis ranks ahead of in EPA plus CPOE score with a minimum of 100 plays. Tim Boyle, Brett Rippon, Trevor Siemian, Trace McSorley, PJ Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He is not thrown for 100 passing yards in any start in his NFL career. And yet his line is at 176 yards right now as we record. This man is 65th out of 71 quarterbacks since 2022. You want to go and take less than a field goal on this guy? By all means, go right ahead. I'm good. I will take Colts minus 2.5. I don't care how much the line has moved since the look ahead. If at any point in the NFL season the market has a team's rating wrong, it was before games were even played, which is what these look ahead lines were based on. So I don't care how many injuries the Colts have in the secondary if the Packers have to trot out a Service Academy offense this week.
I write an article over at the Lines. This was one of my rants within the article. I will go ahead and pile on to the stuff that Steven said. If you go and you look of the 81 quarterbacks that played at least 100 plays in the NFL since 2021, his EPA per play is 81st out of 81 that have played at least. You said the CPOE. He is 78 out of 81 in success rate. You just continue to go on. The guy is just bad. And Steven, you bring up look ahead lines, and you bring up look ahead lines far more than I ever do, and all of that. But here's the thing. I like the Colts a little bit better, I think, than most people do coming into this season. I was down on the Packers a little bit more than most people coming into the season. And so when you reference look ahead lines, that's if you believe that the look ahead line was correct. That was if you believe that the look ahead line was right. Absolutely. And so you're everyone's always going, well, it was 4 or 4.5, so there's no way it's too big of a move. And I'm like, well, yeah, but according to me, this game should have been 3. So it's not really as big of a move as everybody is saying. If
Jordan Love was playing and the line was Packers -5, I would have ran to the book.
Yeah,
would have ran to the book and taken the Colts +5.
Yeah, so it's just, again, you have to also, the assumption there is that the look ahead line is correct, is right. And I didn't believe with that anyway. It was the first bet I made was the Colts this week. I came back in because I bet it at 3. So I came back in at 2.5 and took some more.
I did too.
Yeah, so I came back in and took some more at 2.5. Connor, set us straight here, man.
No. 0% disagreement here. I mean, this is
Thank you.
The Malik Willis 174 yards or 176 yards line was, I mean, it's one of the most egregious opening lines I've seen in a while, and I am just shocked that it's still there. I mean, this is a guy, again, like you mentioned, 99, 80, and 50 passing yards in 3 starts. I tweeted something out about this yesterday, and I felt like I was taking crazy pills because some Packers guys were in my mention saying like, oh, well, he'll be good. Like LaFleur can figure it out. And I'm like, maybe, like if LaFleur
Connor, he's been there for 3 weeks. He's been there for 3 weeks.
That's the other part about all this that nobody's even talking about. The guy's been there for like 20 minutes. Like he doesn't even know the playbook yet.
I mean, like, how are they going to operate an offense? Like, I don't understand. Like, this guy's a terrible quarterback. He doesn't know the system against playing against a Colts team that's going to score plenty of points. Like, how do the Packers score like 17 points? It's going to have to be like, I mean, just design Malik Willis runs with some Josh Jacobs runs, which like the only path to them keeping this game close is like a Matt LaFleur masterclass, which is possible.
Right.
But in that case, there's no shot that Malik Willis throws for 175 yards. Like it would have to take like 3 broken plays of like, that happening. So I have way too much money on the under there.
Yeah.
And I also bet Indy -2.5 and alts. I bet minus, 6.5, 9.5, whatever, all the way up. I'm all in. So we'll see. We'll see you guys, at the other side of the window.
Yeah.
You might see me on the streets if Green Bay covers.
Yeah, we'll have a support group here, after the game if things don't go our way. Seattle Seahawks.
One last thing. If we're wrong, let me just tell you, our coworker Eli Hershkovich is going to be the most smug bastard in the country next week. All right, because he's got Packers 3.5.
All right.
Well, of course he does. Of course.
Again, we'll see. What a horrible sweat that is going to be to have to like be sitting there and Malik Willis is your key to winning a bet. Like I can't even imagine how gruesome that must be and how that's going to feel. Seattle Seahawks on the road at the New England Patriots. They are heading in there as expensive 3 or cheap 3.5 point favorites. 38.5 is our total here in this one. Connor, the Patriots pull the upset of the week last week. I'm not going to say that I took a ton from that other than the fact that it doesn't look like they're just going to lay down. But look, the Cincinnati handed them the game. The tight end was heading in 1 yard line. He was going to score. It's probably going to turn this thing, gets the ball punched out, and it just never gets right again with all of that. And then Seattle, I think I expected maybe a little bit more out of Seattle. Ken Walker looks good for sure. In the past game, I thought maybe I'd see a little bit more. Did not expect Tyler Lockett to have the same amount of targets as DK Metcalf and JSN combined. So I don't really know what's going on there in Seattle either. What do you see here in Seahawks and Patriots?
Yeah, I think this is going to be an ugly game here, but I think the biggest advantage for the Seahawks is on the defensive side here. I was really high on, what Mike McDonald brought over from the Ravens. I think that he maximized the team last year, now comes over and they have a lot of good pieces and they played extremely well, I think, against the Broncos for the most part. Their run defense was awesome and they got great pressure. They pressured the second highest rate last week. It was like 43%. The only team that was pressured more was Jacoby Brissett and the Patriots at 44% against a bad Bengals pass rush. And so now he's getting a good Seattle defense that I think should give Brissett and this Patriots team a lot of issues. They also played, again, like really strong against the run, which I think matters here because I think the Patriots' way to like winning / keeping game close is like running the ball successfully, converting on third down, and then playing good defense, which I think they have some fine defensive pieces. But in this game here specifically, if Seattle's slowing down the run on early downs, it's going to put Brissett in a lot of dangerous situations. I like New England's team total under. You can play alt unders here. It's like 14.5 is like plus 150. I envision this more of as like a 17-10 type of game here instead. So I don't know if I love Seattle against the spread, but I'd probably lean that way as well.
Steven, I'm on air whenever the lines are hitting for week 2. I kind of made almost an impulse bet, I guess, if you will. I played Seattle at 3. I guess the market has agreed with me a little bit as we've moved to 3.5 at a couple of the books. I will admit I'm not like in love with it, but I can't imagine backing the Patriots. I mean, they got the worst game Cincinnati will play in the next 5 years like last week. And so good on them that they were able to be fortunate enough to get that game. So I like Seattle a little bit more, I think, too, than market as we sit right now heading into week number 2. So I played the 3. I don't hate it, but I'm not in love with it.
Yeah, look ahead was 4, so I think if you get 3, it's decent. I don't know if we're getting back to 3 though. So I mean, I'll say this: I bet a juiced Seahawks -3 earlier in the week, and I don't feel as confident about it today as I did when I bet it. Mostly because Kenneth Walker's been back-to-back DMP on the injury report. If you watched that Seahawks game last week, that offense was stuck in mud until they got Kenneth Walker going, and this tackle situation for Seattle is real. So I love Connor's look on the under. I do think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think McDonald can really cause fits for Jacoby Brissett. All those points I had written down as well, so I'm with you on that, Connor. I just am a little nervous about what this Seahawks offense would look like without their starting tackle, and if Kenneth Walker's not going to play. Walker plays, I feel fine about it. But if he doesn't, I start getting a little nervous here laying a full 3 on the road.
San Francisco 49ers heading on the road to the Minnesota Vikings. This is down to 5.5 now in favor of San Francisco on the road. 46.5 is our total. Steven is a fan of the cheating cheaters, the San Francisco cheating cheaters. And so we'll get his, with all their shenanigans and everything that they had going on there. Do you think he made up that he was told on Friday that he was starting? Of course he didn't make that up. Like, no one, you don't mishear you're starting a game on Friday. Like, no, it's exactly what happened. Cheating ass cheaters went out there and cheated and didn't tell us what was going on with McCaffrey. And that's fine. It's fine. This gets up. This was 6.5. And then people said that's too much. And so that gets bought down. And now we're in that kind of dead zone number of 5.5. 49ers heading on the road to a Sam Darnold-led Viking team that looked pretty good in week 1.
I won't spend a lot of time on this because it's a betting show. But last time I checked, the 49ers listed Christian McCaffrey as a limited participant on 3 straight days, listed him officially as questionable, and does not have to declare whether he's playing or not until a couple of hours before the game. Mm-hmm. So please, everybody, remind me what rule the 49ers broke other than making their opponent wonder whether he's playing or not. So if you got screwed in fantasy, next time you have a guy playing on Monday, stick him in your flex and don't be an idiot so you can maximize your opportunities, okay? All right, back to this game. I don't know what to do with this game, honestly. This is the game that has me in a pretzel all week. It's a total pass for me. I loved what I saw out of Sam Darnold. I loved what I saw out of Brian Flores and his defense. He blitzed at a top 10 all-time rate last year, and last week he blitzed less than 30% of the time. So I don't know what we're seeing here. Perhaps he's more confident in his front 4, but I'm backing away from this. I'm not putting too much into the Vikings beating the 49ers last year because they did that in a game without Trent Williams and without Deebo Samuel. So this is a total pass for me. This is a tough spot for the Niners to go from a big primetime game at home on a short week to one of the toughest, best home field advantages in the NFL. So just a pass for me.
Yeah, that was odd. The defensive scheme last week they only played man like on a couple of plays, and like they just played just zone every single down. Didn't do much blitz.
And blitzing Purdy won't work anyway. Yeah. Blitzing Purdy was, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league against that last year.
Yeah, it was interesting. So market called my bluff, Connor. When I saw this thing get to 6.5 and it was still moving, I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to sit and wait on a 7, and then I'm going to take the 7 with the Vikings. And then it never got there. And then it blasted all the way back down, all the way to the 5. So I got left out to dry. That's on me. I got greedy and it didn't get there. So I wanted a Vikings ticket when the big move happened. It didn't get to where it is. And then everyone bought up the numbers that I want. So I'm going to sit on the sidelines for this one, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I don't expect another good game here from Jordan Mason if he does get the start. It looked like Christian McCaffrey practiced on Thursday. I don't know if he's going to play. I'm not expecting him currently to play. Either way, I don't think that this is going to be a run-heavy game for the 49ers here. I think that we see Purdy throw a little bit more. You mentioned that Purdy's been really good against the blitz. Like, that's totally true. He's been great against, especially zone blitzes, has been fantastic too. And his favorite target against zone blitzes has been Deebo Samuel. He's been targeted on 28% against zone compared to 17% against man. And then when they face zone blitzes, Samuel's averaged 2.34 yards per route run. So, I think that we're looking at a game here where Deebo gets fed and it works out a lot. I mean, you still have Ayuk coming back to kind of from like the mini holdout as well, whatever. He didn't look fully, there. I mean, dropped that touchdown or wasn't on the same page as a touchdown last week. So for me, I'm looking at this probably mostly from a prop angle because I think you guys said it here. Like, I'm not really excited to lay anything here on the road with the Niners, especially like a dead number. But I would have taken the 7 again. Like, it's one of those where, yeah, I would have taken the 7 Minnesota probably, but just never got there. So probably looking at props only in this one.
Yeah, I will watch this one pretty heavily though, because I think we're going to find out about Sam Darnold a little bit here. And I have been of the mindset that Sam Darnold didn't really get a fair shake so far in this league. We had no idea whether he was any good or not. I mean, he went into an impossible situation out of college. He was very young, if you guys remember when he came out of college as well. You go and you look, a guy that feels like he's been in the league for 2 decades. He's 27. You know, it's like, so it's not like this guy's ancient or anything. It's like he's 27 right now, and he looked pretty competent. I mean, like the pick was a tip ball last week, off of him. It wasn't even like it was one of the typical Sam Darnold bonehead plays. And so even if they lose this game, and even if they lose this game, basically handily, as long as I see some signs out of Darnold this week, like I'm going to take a better look at maybe betting this Vikings team as we move forward throughout the course of the season. Because when you're throwing to Justin Jefferson, it's just a different animal. When you have that guy out on the field, it's just a different thing. And so I believe in O'Connell as well. So it's more of I'm going to watch as an interested fan and maybe future better.
Matt, you like to put like little reminders in your calendar when to bet on a team when it comes to futures. Like, this is the team to do it, because their schedule is brutal through week 7, and then it really lightens up. So like after that week 7 game against Detroit, that's where I'm looking at maybe an in-season win total, maybe coach of the year, just different variations, but just never Sam Darnold comeback player of the year, because they changed the rules and it has to be an injured guy.
Yeah, he's not. You can't come back from embarrassment anymore. It is like you have to have had a physical ailment in order to do that. All right, New York Jets and the Tennessee Titans. This is 3.5. There are a couple 4s that have popped actually in favor of the Jets on the road. This is a 41.5 total. If we look at this one, Connor, it is Titans last week. I don't know what else to say other than the fact they gave the game away. I mean, they handed the game away. The defense did what they could against that Bears offense, and it was there. And then you see until he redeems himself, because he cost me a lot in this game. He is now Bill Levi's. He has to earn Will Levis back from me. He is Bill Levi's until he earns his name back. Throws the underhand. These kids watch too many Mahomes highlights and then go out and think that they can be Mahomes. It's like, no, man, you cannot be Mahomes. Like you just cannot do it. And they hand the game to that Bears team. Jets, very interested to see if I was too high on this defense coming in. It's one game. We have small sample size. I'm not overreacting. But 2 times in a row and 3 times in a row, maybe if this defense not looking like what I thought, then maybe that's something I need to take with me here. Anything you like here in Jets and Titans?
Yeah, this defense specifically, like their run defense, I think allowed for a lot of issues for the pass defense. And I think that kind of compounded because they were just getting wrecked up the middle on runs. Like, just anything between the tackles, they were being manhandled. And maybe, I almost want to think that was more of a 49ers thing being good, right, less of a Jets being bad. So this, I think, is a great litmus test because the Tennessee Titans ran the ball pretty well last week. And so I expect them to do the same here because I'm sure that they saw that, okay, we can probably have more success passing the ball when we're running the ball so well, against this Jets team, because I don't think that just like a drop back passing game into the Jets will work. We've seen over the last couple of years, again, with Sauce, with DJ Reed, like the secondary is good. I'm still confident in that despite not playing all that well last week. And the Jets offense was very strange too, because on like first and second down early in the game, it was like a run on first down, a bad play on second down, and then they were bailed out by Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, or they weren't, and they punted.
Right.
And so but then when they went to the quick passing game, things were humming a little bit more, So I'm hoping that Rodgers starts kind of checking out of some of those early down runs that Nathaniel Hackett and company are calling, and just starts being himself. He made a great throw to Lazard down the sideline, was whipping it in there to Garrett Wilson most of the time. So I probably lean towards the under here. I'm not necessarily betting the Jets, but I don't want to fully give up on the Jets after 1 week against the Niners.
Yeah, I'm trying to do the not overreact thing, Steven. It's just I understand it's the 49ers, but they score on 8 straight possessions against this Jets defense, and it just makes you wonder, did I power rank this defense a little bit too high? Small sample size. We'll see what happens here with the Titans. Levis wasn't good in the game by any stretch of the imagination, but should have won, all things considered, there against the Bears. But I think this Titans defense has enough juice to make it to where the Jets can't run this thing out. I'm tempted, but I haven't yet. Maybe it'll be a Titans like contest play or something like that or whatever. But I don't think Levis is going to be throwing any more, falling down backward, underhand pick sixes, at least for the rest of the season.
Yeah, 30th quarterback by EPA per play, only a 40% success rate last week. So now you got to play the Jets. I will say this, after having the number 30, actually dead last in, sorry, I got that wrong. Jets, I think, were 30th in pass rush win rate last week. So Hassan Reddick's next contract offer is going to be in the form of a ransom note if that keeps up. But if they don't get a consistent pass rush, then it's my belief that I don't care how good your secondary is, they can only cover for so long. So that's what I need to see better for the Jets. I did bet the under. Now I'm just excited to see how Will Levis kicks me where the sun don't shine for a second week in a row with a pick six or some crippling turnover that gives easy points and we backdoor the over here. So I think this is a bounce back spot for the Jets. Despite giving up a lot of points, I thought the offense moved the ball pretty well against what I think we all would agree is an above average 49ers defense. So it was always my belief that week one was going to be tough for the Jets and then they get on a roll. And I don't see any reason to take me off that opinion.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that we have to kind of battle with as we go into the, first few weeks of the NFL season. Like you have to stick to your priors, and you also have to be willing to get off of your priors if something comes out that makes you think. Again, if you're a Packer backer, a major injury to your quarterback, you have to get off your priors. You have to go in, you have to reassess, you have to do whatever. So it's the delicate kind of walking the line of holding onto your priors, but also being not so cocky to realize that, hey, maybe I was wrong as well coming in, that we've got to make some adjustments. So I agree, way too early here in week one to go nuts. New York Football, Giants, and the Washington Commanders. This is 1.5 in favor of the Commanders at home over the Giants. 42.5 to 43 is our total. 143.5 just popped out there. So people betting the over here in the Giants and Commanders here on a Friday morning. Steven, Commanders, I think we can probably say this, is going to have one of the bottom three defensive units in the NFL when it's all said and done. We're going to get to the end of the season, and they are going to be bottom three in many, many defensive categories. So the question becomes, if there was ever a team that Daniel Jones could possibly take advantage of, could it be the Commanders, or is there just no way in hell that this guy's ever going to be able to do anything in the NFL? He's a dog here against this Commanders squad.
I teased up the Giants. I would just tell everybody, make sure that Malik Neighbors is going to play. We did have a tweet from one of their beat writers saying it doesn't appear to be anything serious. His leg tightened during practice, seems to be okay, and he'll see how it feels on Friday. So just keep an eye on that. If Malik Neighbors doesn't play, then that's kind of a big deal, because all the preseason reports where they were just trying to feed him as much as possible in their training camp practices and whatnot. So if he's playing, I like teasing the Giants up. We all know Washington's defense stinks. I want to spend some time on the Washington offense. I think this is a fake offense right now. I have no confidence in this. I don't think Dan Quinn is sharp. I don't think Cliff Kingsbury is sharp. Jaden Daniels had 7 scrambles and an 86% success rate on those scrambles in week one. And the first thing Dan Quinn says, he doesn't want him scrambling as much this week. Like, that was half of your offense last week. And you want to take that away from him, not to mention that you're playing Terry McLaurin in one spot outside left, 20% more than any other receiver did in week one. There's no creativity to get the ball to your best receiver whatsoever to help Jaden Daniels, a young quarterback. So 3 quarterbacks did not attempt a middle of the field throw that traveled 10 plus yards in week one. Jaden Daniels was one of them. Justin Fields and Kyler Murray were the other. This is not a fully formed functional offense at this point to go with a terrible pass defense. My God, Brian Dable, if you can't keep this inside a touchdown for a teaser leg, just turn in your pink slip right now, because this is as easy as it gets this week.
Woo, Steven coming hot with the Giants teaser leg. I did not think we were going to be saying that on this podcast this week, but here we are. Connor, I guess I'm not jumping to as quite as big a conclusion as Steven is on the offense here. It was Jaden Daniels' first start in the NFL. So I'll give everybody at least a couple of weeks before I start making the statement that this is a fake offense. But what do you see here in Washington and New York Giants?
See, with Cliff Kingsbury, I think he was one of the second most confusing hire of the offseason outside of Luke Getsy, because We saw him in Arizona. The horizontal raid went poorly. It just didn't go well. Goes to UFC, has Caleb Williams and does not have a good offense. Caleb Williams is one of his worst years as a pro. Now is all of a sudden the offensive coordinator of a team with a bad offensive line, no wide receivers, and a quarterback that, frankly, I don't really think is all that good. So now we have all this combined. He threw like 8 screens last week, scrambled, ran 16 times. Like, I don't get it. And so
Washington caught 0 air yards, Connor. 0 air yards. How is that even possible?
I think it's a train wreck. I bet Giants money line, which sounds completely ridiculous. But now you have a matchup where like the Giants pass rush is okay. I mean, like they played a lot of zone, under Shane Bowen. So like they're going to sit back, play zone, hope their pass rush gets home, which I think against Daniels, I think that can work. Again, like they'll be okay. And if all you need is Danny Dimes and the Giants offense to do anything, I think we're talking like 17, 20 points and you probably get home here. So, I'm betting Giants money line. It's gross. Probably close your eyes, cover your eyes play, but I'm in on it. Why not? Got to live a little, right?
I love it. I think it's great play.
I'm going back to the same play I made last week. I made the Malik Neighbors longest reception overplay. I'm going back to the well again this week on this. Like, I think that you do have Daniel Jones have at least a little bit more success here this week against a very bad Commanders team, a very bad Commanders secondary. And I think at this point, Neighbors is just going to get peppered with targets by Daniel Jones from here on out. Like, if you're Daniel Jones and you want to save your job, it's kind of like, well, I'm going to throw to the first round receiver that you got me. And if that isn't good enough, I'm doing what you gave me. This is what you gave me. So this is what I'm doing. I'll go ahead and take the over on Neighbors' longest reception yet again against a bad Commanders secondary. Los Angeles Rams and the Arizona Cardinals. This is point and a half. Cardinals at home. Of course, this has flipped from the Rams being a slight favorite. 47.5 to 48 is your total. Connor, this just comes down to how much can a team take, right? I mean, you lose Puka Nacua, you lose several starting offensive linemen, you have other ones questionable this week. Now it looks like there's even stuff going on in the defense. Like, this Rams team through week 1, by far the worst injury situation in the league. And I just don't know how much is too much. And I don't know. I'm very tempted on the Cardinals because Matthew Stafford's a wizard, but he's going to be trying to be a wizard with 3 backup offensive linemen in there and missing one of his top receivers and things like that. I just don't know. I wonder if the stress test is just too much here.
Yeah, it's really interesting because if you look at last season when the Rams played the Cardinals, they ran the ball 34 and 28 times in 2 like really dominant wins. But I don't know if they have enough juice up front to like do that. And so I'm really curious to see like what they come out with, because if they come out and they're run heavy and they're running the ball well, I mean, they're going to win. Like, that's just like, in my opinion. But if they're not, things become very interesting. Like, are they just going to pass the ball 40 times to Cooper Kupp and Tyler Johnson and Demarcus Robinson? Like, how long can that keep up? Like, I'm not really sure. Their defense, I think, is, massively overrated still. Like, I think Aaron Donald made the rest of the unit look better than it was last year. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Arizona's offense, play really well here as well. Maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. gets on track. I don't want to throw in the towel yet on him. He didn't look good. He was running slow. He played slow, but I mean, he's a rookie, week 1, you never know. I don't want to give up yet. He didn't look good though. So for me, it's kind of like a stay away. I think the Rams were at 2. So I did tease them at 1 point up to like 8. So that was, I think fine. But I don't feel as good about it at this point, to be honest, heading into Saturday.
Yeah, Steven, if we look at this Rams team, we talk about cluster injuries all the time. And, whenever you have them in certain units, maybe it can be masked a little bit better than in others. Certainly you don't want them on the defensive side, but maybe you can run schemes different ways and stuff. But like, offensive line is just tough, right? I mean, like, you always hear these offensive linemen all the time about continuity and being out there together and understanding everyone's tendencies. And we need time to gel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And like, you can't do that when they're not out there, and specifically when there's 3 different guys that are going to be playing backup. So I don't know. Maybe I look at some weird like sack props or something or whatever, like, even though the Cardinals are terrible on defense, it's like, this seems like the opportunity if there ever was an opportunity. What are you looking at here in this one?
Matt, you told me last week when you give out that big of a sigh, then you should probably just pass on the game. And
I
here
agree.
you go
I
looking
agree.
for sack props.
I agree. Fair.
No, I do agree that, at a certain point when you have offensive line injuries, it just doesn't make your offense as functional. Certainly the downfield passing attack becomes extremely difficult because you're just not protecting for long enough. Connor makes a great point about pounding the rock here. I bet Arizona -1 because I'm of the belief that you have to have at least some threshold of a functional offensive line. But the more I've thought about it all week, I think I would have been better served just watching the first couple drives and seeing if they're moving the ball on the ground and maybe live betting this, because it is the stoppable force versus the movable object with the Arizona defensive line. If there was ever a time where a mismatched offensive line could have success, you would think it would be against Arizona's defensive line more than anything. So this is a total question mark for me. I bet Arizona basically -1 on my philosophy. I do think at this point, the wiser thing is just to watch the first couple drives and see what your eyes are telling you.
I think this ends up as a contest play for me and probably maybe not an actual bet, but when injury reports come out a little bit later today, if it breaks bad, I mean, they had a corner, by the way, the Rams had a corner pop up yesterday as well on the injury report that just came out of nowhere. Like
they already had a corner on IR too. So that'd be a second corner. And we already know 3 offensive linemen are now out. That's definite. Yeah. And then there's 2 more you have to monitor. It might be 5.
It's just the wildest thing through week 1, basically, that you could ever imagine. Cincinnati Bengals and the Kansas City Chiefs in a very, very interesting battle out there in the betting market. So 5.5 to 6 right now in favor of the Chiefs at home over Cincinnati. 47.5 to 48 is the total. Steven, this thing got to 6.5. They bet it. They took it. They said, okay, Cincinnati's not that bad. It goes all the way down to 5.5. Then it gets, people say, oh no, that's too much. The Chiefs are too good. Bets back up again. It gets through 6 again, back down to 6 again, back down to 5.5 at one of the books, 2 of the books as we sit right now, but some 6s out there. So there is a battle going on with some groups out there who say Cincinnati's not as bad as we saw in week 1. And another group out there saying like, well, it doesn't really matter. The Chiefs are just that good and they're going to pound them this week. It's very, very interesting to watch this line move and dance all over the place. I can't bet Cincinnati until they get fully out there and healthy. And so I tend to lean to the people that are backing the Chiefs in this, but I don't know. What say you?
Matt, don't you think this battle in the market is another example of, the spreadsheet and the number crunchers who will bet it if it's a certain number on the Bengals side and the ones that are using their eyes a little bit more on the Chiefs side?
Sure. Well, I mean, so if people are holding steady to their power ratings, like most likely somebody entered the season with the Chiefs at 1 or 2, and they probably had Cincinnati, whatever, 7, 8, whatever, something like that. And yeah, so when it got to 6.5, they're going, that's just too much. Like, I'm not going to, because a lot of these guys won't adjust their power ratings at all without major injuries, and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it certainly could be just, hey, this is too much. I had them if the Chiefs are 1 and Cincinnati is 6 or 7 or whatever, 6.5 points is just too much.
Yeah, I bet Chiefs -5.5. Here's why. I think you have to downgrade the Bengals when they don't have T. Higgins. Looks like he's not going to play. I don't think Tyler Boyd is walking through that door. He's on a different team this year. They lost DJ Reader to kind of hold up that defensive line. So now the Chiefs can pound the rock with the strength of their offensive line being the middle with Isaiah Pacheco running through that guard center gap. So I think the Chiefs, I have to upgrade. Clearly, they have more explosiveness on offense, adding Xavier Worthy and maybe Marquise Brown comes back this week. And we know, I know they were a toe away from blowing that lead on Thursday Night Football. They also were up 10 in the fourth quarter. And they had every opportunity to win that game. They did cover. So you can look at it and say they got lucky at the end, but also, they were dominant for 3 quarters in that game against a very good Baltimore team. So I'm more of the belief that until the Bengals are fully formed, until they actually show us, then I can't upgrade them. If anything, I have to downgrade them a little bit with the missing pieces, and I have to upgrade Kansas City. So even though this is only a couple of points different than when they played with Jake Browning last year against the Chiefs in Kansas City, I think the Chiefs' offense is better, and I don't think there's going to be many games the rest of the season where the Chiefs are going to be less than a touchdown favorite at home. That's how I'm kind of all in on Kansas City at this point to the point where I even bet Andy Reid 50-1 coach of the year this week, because I think there's a chance they could go 15-2. The market says they're less than 4-1 to go 15-2 this year in an alt win total. If they go 15-2, you can't tell me Andy Reid's not at least a finalist for coach of the year at 50-1.
T. Higgins, 2 straight DNPs on Wednesday and Thursday. So, yeah, not looking good for him. Chris Jenkins is a depth on that defensive line. You said already down defensive line. He double DNP, so DNP on Wednesday and Thursday. So they could be down even more guys there on the Cincinnati side. On the Kansas City side, doesn't look like Hollywood Brown's going to make it back either. DNP Wednesday, Thursday there for him. So does that open up more for Xavier Worthy, Connor? This was something I was trying to, on a couple of the shows I've been on, arguing that people maybe should take at least a little bit of caution. Yes, they were flashy plays, and yes, he scored touchdowns, but it was on 3 touches. It was on 3 touches. 1 was a blown coverage as well. So it's like he didn't go out in game 1 and earn a ton of targets, but with Hollywood Brown not being out there, maybe he does here in week number 2. I think that's another thing that I'm going to be monitoring is like, what kind of role are they going to do with Worthy? Are they going to force feed him? Are they going to force touches into his hands as long as Hollywood Brown isn't out there?
Yeah, I don't know if he was ever a target earner too, like even in college. So like I think that's something that's is still kind of TBD, but may not even matter. That's kind of one of the issues is like you go back and forth because if you're playing with Patrick Mahomes on a good offense with other receivers who are helping you get open, like it's just like that's
Right.
kind of stuff I go back and forth on. In this spot specifically, though, you brought up a great point about the matchup up front. This is my biggest edge of the game. It would be the Kansas City running game against this Cincinnati run defense. Like we just saw a New England team that their offensive line stinks. They don't have a good off. They have no threat of a passing game. And this Bengals team could not stop the run. Like they tried, they stacked the box even plenty. Ramondre Stevenson's still in a great game. Now you have Isaiah Pacheco, you have a real offensive line, and you have a team that you can't stack the box. If you stack the box against Patrick Mahomes, like he'll throw over 1 million yards. Like imagine, like, you know, I would love to see them try, you know what I mean? And that's fun. I just think that's hilarious to think about that it's even a possibility, but they're not going to do that. So it's like, I think that Isaiah Pacheco has a massive game. I think that he crushes them for 100 plus rushing yards here. I would lean Kansas City. Like it's just tough because I like Andre Yoshivas as a player, but he's not like, he should not be on the field for 100% of snaps as the clear number 2 target. Like I think he's fun, like a fun number 3 who's going to have some big games once T. Higgins comes back, but not this. So I have a tough time with it here. I'm on Kansas City rushing overs for Pacheco. And then maybe like a longest reception over for Worthy, but I don't know if I'm touching his regular prop.
I like that angle. I'm actually gonna join you on the Pacheco stuff because I think also we could get to a point in the third quarter where they're up 17 in this game, and it's just like Pacheco's just getting every handoff and getting every single look and things like that. There are brighter days ahead for Cincinnati if you do have futures on them out there. It is Commanders next week. It's Panthers the week after that, so we will at least get a couple of breather games there for the Cincinnati team, but I don't think this week is the week in which they find everything and get healthy. So I'm with you guys there on that. Pittsburgh Steelers and the Denver Broncos. This is 2.5 in favor of the Steelers on the road over the Broncos. 36.5 is our total. If you listen to Mike Tomlin stand on that podium and tell you, you know me, I talk about the players that are healthy. So quit asking me about Russell Wilson. It's going to be Justin Fields. I don't want you talking about me about Russell Wilson anymore. And so it's going to be Justin Fields this week, it seems, going up against the Broncos there in Denver. Connor, we didn't see much from any of these rookie quarterbacks in week 1, right? So, like, you didn't see anything from Caleb Williams. You saw a rushing upside from Jaden Daniels, but, we knew that was there anyway. Like, that's nothing that surprised anybody that Jaden Daniels can run the football well. We knew that. Bo Nix, we saw a little bit out of him, but not much either. So, second start for him against a Pittsburgh front in which TJ Watt, could have had the most monster game ever last week if it wasn't for a couple of penalties that get called on him. Welcome to the NFL is all I can say here for this one. What are you thinking, Steelers and Broncos?
Yeah, I think that we see the Broncos probably try and run the ball a little bit more. We saw 40 Bo Nix pass attempts last week. And now we have a Steelers run defense that, played pretty well, I think, against Bijan Robinson, but their success rate wasn't all that great. They were like middle of the pack. I think it's like one of those things that they shouldn't shy away from necessarily. Bo Nix's prop opened at 148.5 passing yards. That's the lowest I've ever seen since Malik Willis previously, which is funny because he's also making a start this week. It got a bet up all the way up to like 165, 170, which is fine. That makes a little bit more sense there. But it's one of those things where we know that the Steelers are going to run the ball. My biggest takeaway last week, Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, the touch split between the two was gigantic. I don't know whether that was Jaylen Warren's injury coming in or whether Arthur Smith just loves Najee Harris, which would be the least surprising thing in the world. So for me, it's probably just going to be mostly prop angles here. I don't necessarily want to touch either of these teams, to be honest, right now.
Steven, it's under a field goal, but it's not. This could get to a field goal. Actually, I mean, if we look at in the market, DK's at -118, Caesars is at -115, so is MGM. So this could go to a full field goal. Steelers on the road with Justin Fields as their quarterback. Is there anything out there tempting you to want to come in on the Broncos?
I already bet the Broncos on the look ahead before I watched Bo Nix have a snap, which maybe was not the wisest decision considering he was 31st in success rate in week 1 with a -5.1 completion percentage over expected. But I'm willing to give him a pass going into Seattle against the Mike McDonald defense. They literally scored their first 10 points without a single first down. One of the craziest things I've seen in recent years. So, this was not a functional offense against a good defense, but I also think maybe the Steelers defense looked better than they actually were last week. If you looked at what Atlanta was trotting out there, they were telegraphing everything. ESPN's advanced stats had a nugget about every single snap they were in shotgun, Atlanta threw the ball. And every time they were in pistol, they ran it 83% of the time, and they only had like 1 or 2 snaps under center.
And did you hear TJ Watt after the game? He said something about like they saw something on tape that was a
center.
Tell. Yeah. Like he said that he saw something on tape that was a tell, and so like he knew what was going on as well. Like, yeah, it was just a train wreck there last week.
Yeah, so like Pittsburgh had a cheat code essentially on defense last week. So I don't think you're going to get that this week. I think just philosophically, when you have a game with a total of 36.5 and you're getting a full 3 with the home dog, I would take that. Right now, we don't have that as we record Friday morning. Keep an eye out for it. But if it's not, then I think you could do worse than a Broncos teaser leg here all the way up to 8.5. I mean, this Pittsburgh offense as well only had 4.1 yards per play in a dome environment, went 0 for 2 in the red zone, and did not reach the red zone until 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So seems like getting 8.5 against that offense is decent.
Yeah, and let's just remember, it's still Justin Fields. I mean, like it's still Justin Fields. Like we know, there's rushing upside and also that. Like we also know the floor is still very, very low. If this gets to a full 3, the Broncos are going to in my account, and I'll just deal with it. Like that's something I'll have to deal with. Like you said, we'll come back for another support group whenever Bo Nix like goes 11 of 39 or whatever it is or something like that. Yeah, I'll just come back and be like, yeah, that's on me. All right, guys, let's close things out here with Sunday Night Football, Chicago Bears and the Houston Texans. This is up to 6.5 in favor of the Texans. 45.5 is our total out there. Steven, this number on the move gets bet up, all the way from kind of at like 5.5-ish number all the way to 6.5. I got to say that I agree with it. I think the Texans are far superior to the Bears. I think we saw last week that Bears might be good, and I've been screaming this all offseason. I think the Bears might be good like middle of the season beyond, but like it just takes a little bit of time to adjust in the NFL. And I think we saw that last week with Caleb Williams and when he's playing in his first real game speed against a real opponent. This could head to 7, it looks like, at some of the books out there. It looks like we are well on our way to this being a full touchdown in favor of the Texans. So if you want the Texans and you still see the 6.5s out there, get in now. What do you got here in Bears Texans?
Yeah, this seems like the perfect storm of, betting services hopping in on Texans early, the public coming in on a primetime island game, probably going to take the Texans as well. And, not every reaction in week 2 is an overreaction. This was 3.5 on the look ahead. We're up to 6.5 as we record now. I think it's fairly warranted here. I mean, the Texans, although, they didn't cover with some fluky stuff on the road in Indianapolis, if you were looking at 3 there, I know it was 2.5 as well. So they won by 2. They didn't cover. Chicago's going to be without Rome Odunze for this game. Keenan Allen is highly questionable. Even if he winds up on the field, he probably isn't going to be 100%. And last week, as bad as Bryce Young was for the Panthers, Caleb Williams was the one that was dead last among all quarterbacks in week 1 when you go by EPA and CPOE composite. So less than 3 yards per play for the Bears offense last week. So if your only concern is the Houston offensive line, which to me is, I guess, theoretically maybe one of the weak links. I mean, they were top 3 in quick pressure allowed last week in week 1 against what I think is a pretty solid Colts defensive line. So I think arrow up for the Texans here. I came into the season with them as my number 3 team in the league. I don't see any reason to move off of that until the Bears show us any semblance of an offense.
Yeah, I mean, this could end up being a teaser leg if this thing actually gets through 7 or something like that as well. For me, it's going to be my survivor play this week. I'm playing the Texans. I want to go ahead and just get that out of the way. So I'm going to play the Texans this week as well. Connor, what do you see here in Bears Texans?
Yeah, it's really tough for me to back the Bears here just because of what we saw last week. Now, that being said, I want to believe that the Bears offense will be better this season.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that this is the spot against a Houston defense that I think should be pretty good. But that being it can't be much worse just based on Caleb never got into rhythm. He was missing throws. When guys were open, he was, it wasn't clicking. When they weren't open, obviously he was just, making bad decisions. It was like a combination of everything that I just don't think went their way. Their defense and special teams bailed them out of that game. If it's got to 7, maybe I would consider taking the Bears as kind of a close your eyes, pray that Caleb Williams is not bad as we saw last week. But I too tend to agree with you guys that Chicago is probably the right side here, or that Houston's probably the right side here.
Connor, I just wanted to ask you one more quick question about a potential prop in this game. Joe Mixon had 30 carries last week. Now, I'm not saying he's going to have 30 carries every week. And I suck at props, so I'm really happy you're on the show this year because we need that on this show, and you're a specialist, and you almost swept the board in all your props bets in week number 1. But I'm seeing 68.5 on Joe Mixon in a game where they're a 6.5 point favorite, where it seems pretty clear. They've even voiced it again this week. They have no problem making him the workhorse. By my math, I mean, he could rush for less than 4 yards per carry on 20 carries and still get over 68.5. Am I just totally square here, or are you seeing the same thing I am?
No, I like that. I think that's a good look here. I think you can go with the attempts look as well. Over 17.5 is, the rushing attempts look. My only concern is the Bears run defense last season was good. They were top 3 to 5 in basically every metric. And then they just got blasted by the Titans and Tony Pollard in week 1. So that's my only concern is I go back and forth. They didn't look good last week. If the Texans are ahead, I mean, Mixon's going to go on 20 for 115. You know what I mean? And if that's how the run defense is, if it's not how it is, and they're actually last year, and then we're probably looking at 18 for 65, or something like that, which is that makes the prop real sweaty. Yeah. So I almost prefer the attempts if you're banking on the Texans keeping a lead or in neutral game script here, which I think is a pretty good bet. It seems like a low percentile outcome of the Bears getting out to the lead and pushing the Texans to go really pass heavy here. So I think I would probably prefer attempts as we talk through it here,
As we look at this Texans team too from a receiving standpoint, it looks like this is almost like a 1A, 1B, 1C situation with them. They ran a bunch of 12 last year. They got rid of that at least in week 1, ran a bunch of 11 to get all 3 of the guys out on the field together. Nobody had a significant target advantage in this. I talked to a Houston Texans beat writer earlier this week as well, who was saying, yeah, I mean, any given week, depending on what the defense is giving them, CJ Stroud is just good enough to just take advantage of whatever it is, right? And so I think on a week-to-week basis, probably a great team from a DFS standpoint, where you can, you don't have to be right. You can maybe you can put together stacks with all of the different receivers and stuff and whatnot. But on a week-to-week basis from a prop betting standpoint, it might get really frustrating trying to figure out which guy is going to be the guy.
Yeah. I have Tank Dell on a team, and I don't know when to start him every week. So maybe Connor.
He played a lot more than we expected last week, which is awesome news. So I think that there was some good, his props opened really low. This week was 44 or something like that, which I thought was really low. That got bet up. I mean, it got eaten up immediately. I think he's in the low 50s, which is right. I mean, you have these situations, which it's interesting. Both these receiving cores are in the uncertain situations at, who's going to pop off each week. But now the Bears are clearing up a little bit. We saw Rome Odunze not practice. I don't think he's going to play this week. Keenan Allen's a little bit banged up. It's a 40-something% target share. And on the other side, I think it's probably just going to be a mix. Nico Collins had an illness, but was true alpha there last week. So.
Yeah. Guys, we'll have a separate video for Monday Night Football, so do appreciate you hanging around for everything here. Had a pretty good week 1, so hopefully we can continue on here in week number 2. Connor, do appreciate you being here as well. Of course, check out their great work over at 4for4. Awesome stuff over there, not just from a betting standpoint, from fantasy standpoint, DFS standpoint. Be sure and take in all of their great work. We do everything free here, so please hit that subscribe button. We'll be here all season for you. And if you head to thelines.com, upper right-hand corner is the Discord, and that is also free, where you can go in and chit-chat about things all season long in all of the sporting betting markets out there. For Connor, for Steven, I'm Matt. Good luck on all your week 2 bets.